Today we continue our conversation with General Ben Hodges, the former commanding general of the United States Army in Europe. My guest is currently the Pershing Chair in Strategic Studies at the Center for European Policy Analysis. In the previous part, we discussed the expectations for the NATO Madrid summit and about the difficult relation between the US and China. Today we will focus on Poland, on Central and Eastern Europe, and on Russian aggression against Ukraine. Sir, more than 130 days have passed since Russia armed aggression against Ukraine. Together with our Ukrainian friends, we have lived through every stage of it, from the horror of the first days to the feeling of triumph after the retreat of Russian troops from the outskirts of Kiev. But now we see a growing conviction, including in the media in Western Europe, that it is harder, tougher, that the Russian troops are now winning more victories. I would like to ask you for your assessment of the situation. How do you foresee the next phase of the conflict?
I actually am an optimist. I believe that by the end of this year, Ukraine will push the Russian forces back to the 23 February line. And I believe that because all of the capabilities that the West is providing to Ukraine is just now beginning to be felt. The howitzers, the rocket launchers, other weapon systems, those are just now getting into the fight. So even without all of that, Russia was impaling itself on Ukrainian defenders. So now as more and more modern capability gets in their hands, and as the Ukrainians learn how to employ it, I think we're going to see a change in the momentum. And I also believe that the Russians are exhausted. I mean, they are pushing untrained soldiers into the fight. They are pulling equipment that is 50 years old out of depots to put it into the fight. The only thing that they have is artillery. They have no way to escalate. They have no way to break through. They are using old-fashioned attrition. Now that's effective. I mean, that can be effective if we are not able to help Ukraine destroy or disrupt their artillery. But I mean, that's all they have, and they have a very bad manpower situation. I think that the leadership of the Russian military, of the general staff and their commanders, is very questionable right now. There's decades of corruption, and they do not know how. They do not know how to make the adjustment at the operational and strategic level when their system has failed. Now they have to adapt and be more innovative and figure out what to do. That I don't believe that they can do that. So this is why I have optimism. It's not going to be pretty. It's going to be very difficult, but I am optimistic that the Russian side is going to crack in the next 2, 3, 4 months, and that the Ukrainians are going to be able to move over to the offensive. As you know, my old friend, that war is a test of will, and it's a test of logistics. And I see it improving in both of those categories for Ukraine. I mean, that I think that the use of power is required, that we have deterred ourselves with an exaggerated fear of what Russia might do. We have not used all of the advantages that we have. I also agree that Russia will probably attempt to draw a line at this, to declare victory, in hopes that the West will, okay, finally, and that Ukraine will not accept that, but that they will not have as much support. So that's why I think that that the United States has got to continue the commitment, and most other nations will follow. I don't know that Germany and France will follow, or Italy. But this coming week is an important week. The G7 is meeting in Elmau in Germany, and then the NATO summit in Madrid. The EU has been stronger than I have ever seen them before. So I remain a little bit more optimistic. I hope that the U.S. domestic situation does not distract the president too much from keeping the focus on Russia and Ukraine. I think that, and I do have to go like in about four more minutes. So okay, I think that Russia has four tasks. Number one, they have to reorganize and regroup to get some kind of victory. That's what they're doing right now. Number two, they are focused on preventing a revolution inside Russia. I think that the potential for an internal collapse in Russia is really, really strong right now, and so they have to make sure that that doesn't happen. Number three, they have to stabilize their economy, find new markets, which of course he's trying to do that now with the other BRICS countries. I don't think India is going to be much help, and I hope that the United States will do what it takes to limit that. And then number four, they have to reconstitute power back to pre-conflict levels, and that's going to take years, and they won't be able to do it without fixing their economy. So they have four really important tasks that they've got to deal with, and I think that we should be doing all we can to make them fail on any and all of those four tasks.
Thank you for your answer. Your comments are encouraging for our listeners. Now, I would like to ask you about something more specific, which means Suwalki corridor. But first, let me remind our listeners why it is so important for NATO guarantees and for the security of Poland and the Baltic states. The Suwalki Gap, or the Suwalki Corridor, it's a sparsely populated area immediately southwest of the border between Lithuania and Poland. The corridor separates the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad on the Baltic Sea from Belarus, an ally of Russia that now hosts thousands of Russian troops and soon will be home to permanently stationed Russian forces. It is also the only way to get by road or rail from Poland and Central Europe to the Baltic states, arguably the NATO's most exposed members. And the corridor, it's not even a corridor. It's just a wide open rural region with dense forest and small villages. The Russian aggression on the border between two NATO states seems far-fetched, but perhaps the Russian invasion on Ukraine teaches us a lesson about the Russian unpredictability.
So the Suwalki corridor is a very important piece of NATO territory because it connects Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania to Poland and the rest of the alliance. It's between Kaliningrad and Belarus. And so it is vulnerable because it is so narrow. And the Russians could block it with indirect fire. It doesn't have to be occupied with force, with troops. It could be blocked with artillery and rockets and so on, if they thought they needed to do that. I don't believe they will do that because that would mean the chance of a conflict with NATO, because they would be attacking Poland, they would be attacking Lithuania, and the alliance obviously is not going to stand for that. So given that Russia is in such a bad condition right now, they are in a terribly unfavorable strategic situation with 85% of their land forces committed to Ukraine. A big part of their Navy is committed down there, their air forces, their ammunition situation is bad. So I don't think it's likely that they would do something that would then put them in direct conflict with NATO. But I have been wrong before on estimating what they might do. So Poland, Lithuania, the rest of the alliance are taking the right steps to improve the defenses there. You know, 6 months ago, we had just the EFP battle groups that were there, and with host nation troops, we now have significantly increased the capabilities that are in both of those places. So I'm not satisfied that we have enough there, especially in terms of ammunition and air defense, but it would be a real problem for the Russians. And that means also Belarus would have to cooperate. And I'm not sure that Belarus really wants to be handcuffed to Russia in a war against NATO.
Sir, thank you for your time and for our discussion. I look forward to meeting you in the future. And I also thank our listeners and invite them to future episodes of Scene from Poland.